Good day, grade 9. We are now on lesson 5 of quarter 1. Once again, I am Ma'am Liza, your teacher in English 9. I hope you will all listen to my discussion for this week. Before we start, we have here our objectives. Determine the elements of metrical tales. Value the judgment and critical issues discussed in literature. And then complete the story pyramid of the story The Pardoner's Tale. Remember that last time we discussed about the story The Pardoner's Tale, which is a part of the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales is from the medieval English period. Medieval literature, or Middle English, is a variety of English language that was adopted after the Norman conquest in England in 1066. The invasion of the Normans resulted in the adoption of many French cultural influences in England. One of these major influences is the development of the English language from Old English to Middle English, which adapted words from Norman French vocabulary. Within the history of universal literature, the contributions generated in the Middle Ages have served much to leave records of what the societies of this era were like, their culture, their moral and social patterns, as well as the literary styles used to tell real or fabulous stories of that moment in the history of humanity. Here are the characteristics of medieval literature. First, it begins with the fall of the Roman Empire and ends at the beginning of the Renaissance. Many of the works of medieval literature are by unknown authors. The themes of the texts had moral, ethical, and didactic contents of Christianity that were supervised by the Church. It developed stories of chivalry to promote Christian values, and it developed lyrical and epic genres by strengthening the use of verse. Last time we discussed about Pardoner's Tale, which is a part of Canterbury Tales. So what is a Canterbury Tales? So it is considered as one of the most prominent literary works in English during the medieval period or Middle Ages. Canterbury Tales is a collection of stories, contains more than 17,000 lines that are beautifully written in Middle English. The literary technique used by the author in presenting the story is called frame tale, where a character within a story tells another story or a story within a story. Chaucer came up with the ingenious literary device of having a pilgrimage, a technique that allowed him to bring together a diverse group of people. In Decameron, all the characters belong to the same class. Thus, Chaucer's narrators represent a wide spectrum of society with various ranks and occupation, from the distinguished and noble knight. We descend through the pious abbess, the prioress, the honorable clerk, the rich landowner or the franklin, the worldly and crude wife, and on down the scale to the low, vulgar miller and carpenter, and the corrupt pardoner. So, this is the prelude of the Canterbury Tales, or the introduction. At the Tabard Inn, the narrator joins a company of 29 pilgrims. The pilgrims, like the narrator, are traveling to the shrine of the martyr St. Thomas Becket in Canterbury. The narrator gives a description of 27 of these pilgrims, including, for example, the perfect and gentle man who loved truth, freedom, and honor, the most socially prominent person on the journey, the battles he fought were all religious war of St. nature. So that is the knight. So we also have the merchant, the rich and powerful rising middle class, well dressed. No one would tell he was deeply in debt. We have the clerk, a student at Oxford, extremely thin on a thin horse. He wears worn clothes and he is one of the most admired people in the group of pilgrims. We also have the parson. He is poor but rich in holy thoughts and works. Live the perfect life first and then teach it. A true Christian priest. We also have the pardoner, a church official who had authority from Rome to sell pardon and indulgence to those charged with sins, one of the most corrupt of the churchmen. In the prelude to his tale, he confesses to his hypocrisy. We also have the physician. He knows astronomy and something of nature, but nothing of the Bible. Made a lot of money during the plague. He loves gold. We have the man of law. He is an able lawyer. What people think that he is busier and wiser than he really is. We also have the wife of Bath. She is rather a lively woman who has been married 5 times and makes many humorous remarks about sex. Her story provides insight into the role of women in the late Middle Ages. Then we have here the prioress. She is a woman of two faces. She is introduced in the general prologue as an aristocratic, gentle, pious nun, but she is a raving bigot because her tale is full of anti-Semitic attitudes. It is what her tale says about her. However, that is at the core of Chaucer's intent in her depiction. She is shallow, unworldly, unchristian, and childish of character. And this is what Chaucer wants the reader to understand about her. The host suggests that the group ride together and entertain one another with stories. He decides that each pilgrim will tell 2 stories on the way to Canterbury and 2 on the way back. And the man who told his story best was to be given an expensive dinner by the other pilgrims. So that is the start of the Canterbury Tales. So once again, the Pardoner Tales is a part of the Canterbury Tales, wherein all the pilgrims will tell stories on their way to Canterbury and the way back. So let us determine the elements of metrical tales, because Canterbury Tales is an example of metrical tales. So when we say metrical tale, it is a long narrative written in verse form. It usually tackles the lives of ordinary people in society. Metrical tales incorporate elements of realism. Chaucer's masterpiece is a collection of metrical tales that talk about common issues encountered by people from different walks of life. So we have here the elements of metrical tales. The first one is setting. It refers to the time and place of the story. Being a narrative, metrical tales are presented with elements of time and place that establish the backdrop and general atmosphere of the story. Characters. Like other forms of narratives, metrical tales also focus on the characters, particularly the protagonist or protagonists. Protagonist is the central character in the story who directly confronts the main conflict. Antagonist, on the other hand, is the adversary of direct opposite of the protagonist. A plot. It refers to the logical presentation of the series of events in the story. The basic parts of a metrical tale's plot are similar to that of a typical short story, namely beginning action, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. A beginning action refers to initial events in the story that introduce the setting and characters. These events lead to the conflict. In the beginning action, the conflict of the story begins to arise. It is also called exposition. Rising action refers to the event that takes place after the beginning action. This is the part of the plot where the conflict gets more complicated and affects the characters. Climax. It is the turning point of the story. This is the most intense part of the plot where the protagonist confronts the conflict directly through actions, realizations, or decisions. Falling action. It refers to the untangling of events. These events, after the climax, present the result of the actions made by the protagonist in the climax. Thus, this is the part of the story when the conflict starts to resolve itself. Resolution. It takes place as the event and the following action finally lead to the ending of the story. Sometimes this is also called the denouement. We have here a point of view. Most symmetrical tales are narrated in a first-person point of view. The narrator oversees the events and characters in the story. Literary devices. The use of literary elements of narrative, such as flashback and foreshadowing, may also be present in metrical tale. Moreover, literary devices used in poetry like motifs, symbolisms, figures of speech, and imagery may also be employed in a metrical tale. We also have here structure. Although metrical tale tells a story, it is not written in prose form. Instead, it is written in a poetic matter. It is structured or patterned based on a particular meter and form. Literary standard. It must be able to meet the basic standards of literature such as universality, artistry, style, and spiritual value. Theme. It is the main message that the author aims to convey through the literary text. So I hope you understand the background of a metrical tale as well as the different elements of a metrical tale. So for your activity that must be submitted on Wednesday from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., on a one sheet of paper or on your portfolio or album, do activity 2 in an integrated English for effective communication on page 44. First, you should draw the graphic organizer before answering it. Okay, thank you, grade 9.